They called it unrecognizable mush before the fork even touched the plate. But what happens when the dessert they mocked tastes warmer, richer, and more comforting than expected? How many ideas about America were formed from headlines instead of experience? One bite of apple pie is about to expose something bigger. The America people judge from afar is rarely the America waiting at the table. America's sweetest surprise. The first American surprise of the 2026 World Cup may not happen under stadium lights. It may happen when a warm slice of apple pie lands on a diner plate looking untidy, with cinnamon-scented filling leaning against the crust like it has made itself comfortable. That soft center can look like unrecognizable mush, especially to visitors used to European pastries that arrive with sharper edges, cleaner layers, and the posture of someone attending a royal wedding.
The best sweet pie in the world is an American apple pie. You know, the whole world makes apple pies. Every single nation has its.
It burns and freezes your tongue at the same time.
That judgment is understandable because Parisian apple tarts often display thin slices in careful circles. Austrian strudel keeps its filling tucked inside delicate pastry, and British apple desserts usually stay closer to the familiar language of crumble or pie. American apple pie follows a warmer and more generous rulebook. It cares less about holding a perfect pose and more about delivering warmth, spice, butter, acidity, and sweetness in the same forkful. The apples soften enough to share their juices, yet a well-made filling still keeps pieces of fruit, while the crust brings the structure back with a flaky, buttery snap. This is where the misunderstanding begins to collapse faster than the slice itself. American food is often introduced overseas through extreme headlines, giant portions, chain restaurants, and jokes about sugar. So many World Cup visitors arrive expecting spectacle without craftsmanship. Then they discover that a proper apple pie depends on balance rather than excess. Tart apples keep the sugar in check, cinnamon deepens the flavor without hiding the fruit, and the crust must survive filling without becoming soggy. That is careful cooking dressed in the comfortable clothes of home. In host regions such as New York, New Jersey, Dallas, Los Angeles, and Miami, the World Cup has given international visitors more reasons to wander beyond the stadium district and sit down in American diners, bakeries, and family restaurants. There, apple pie does something media coverage rarely manages. It makes America feel familiar without making it feel boring. Add a scoop of vanilla ice cream, and the contrast becomes almost unfair. The cold cream melts into the warm filling, the crust catches both, and suddenly the plate looks like a weather system created by someone's grandmother. What makes this dessert so distinctly American is not that Europe lacks excellent apple pastries, because Europe has many of them. The clearest difference lies in the mood surrounding the dessert. A French tart often invites admiration before the first bite, while an American pie invites everyone to move closer to the table. It is generous, relaxed, and built for sharing, which explains why it appears at holidays, roadside diners, family reunions, and neighborhood bakeries without needing a formal introduction. By the time the second forkful disappears, the phrase unrecognizable mush usually sounds less like criticism and more like a confession that appearance won the first round. Flavor wins the rest, and American apple pie leaves the kind of warm, cinnamon-sweet memory that can follow a traveler long after the whistle, and the last suitcase is finally packed for home. America's creamy plot twist. The first mistake is assuming this behaves like an ordinary cake. A proper New York cheesecake arrives with the calm confidence of something that knows the fork is about to lose. Its surface may look plain, almost modest, yet the first cut reveals a center so thick and smooth that a single slice can make a croissant seem like a warm-up exercise.
I've got the pecan cheesecake. Let's give it a try. Get a little bit of cream on there. That is unbelievable. Some of the best cheesecake I've ever had in my life.
This is the best cheesecake I've ever ate in my entire life and possibly all of LA. That shit is so good. Best cheesecake in LA.
Oh my god. I'm not the massive cheesecake fan, but well, that is incredible. It is so rich inside.
That density is exactly where many European expectations get rearranged. German Käsekuchen usually relies on quark, which gives it a lighter, tangier body. Italian versions often use ricotta, creating a grainier and more delicate texture. In San Sebastian, the famous Basque cheesecake proudly carries a dark, caramelized top and a softer center. America chose another path and built its version around cream cheese, then kept adding until restraint quietly left the kitchen. A standard 9-inch New York cheesecake commonly uses around 2 pounds of cream cheese. That is roughly the weight of a small laptop, except the laptop rarely comes with a graham cracker crust. The high fat content gives the filling its deep richness, while eggs provide structure and slow baking keeps the texture creamy instead of rubbery. Sour cream or heavy cream often adds a gentle tang, which prevents all that richness from becoming tiring after 3 bites. The finished slice feels luxurious without relying on elaborate decorative tricks. The history behind it makes the whole dessert feel even more American. Food historians commonly trace modern cream cheese to William Lawrence in Chester, New York during the 1870s. The product later became famous under the name Philadelphia, chosen because the city had a strong reputation for high-quality dairy. In other words, one of America's best-known food names began with New York cheese, wearing a Philadelphia name tag, which feels perfectly appropriate for a country where reinvention often starts with better branding. During the 2026 World Cup, visitors moving through the New York-New Jersey region and nearby Philadelphia can encounter this dessert in old-school delis, neighborhood bakeries, hotel restaurants, and counters where the slices stand tall enough to qualify for their own zip code. European cheesecake often finishes a meal with elegance. The New York version arrives like a full closing argument, rich, direct, and impossible to ignore. That careful balance also explains why the dessert becomes strangely addictive. Each bite offers 3 sensations at once: the cool smoothness of the filling, the slight acidity that wakes up the palate, and the crumbly base that keeps the texture from becoming monotonous. Add a few berries and the fruit becomes a helpful referee trying to keep cream cheese and sugar from taking over the entire game. American cheesecake does not apologize for its size, weight, or confidence. It turns abundance into precision, then serves the result by the slice. After tasting it, the old claim that American desserts are merely excessive begins to sound incomplete, because this is excess engineered with remarkable care. It is the kind of American welcome that leaves a visitor checking the bakery window again before heading back to the hotel. The Crunch Blueprint. American fried chicken does something wonderfully unfair to self-control. People hear it before they fully taste it. That first crack through the crust carries across a table like a starter pistol, and suddenly everyone nearby remembers they were supposedly hungry. During the 2026 World Cup, visitors passing through cities such as Atlanta, Dallas, and Kansas City may arrive expecting the greasy fast food stereotype they have seen in overseas headlines. What they encounter instead is one of America's smartest lessons in texture. Europe has excellent fried foods, although most follow a different design. Vienna's schnitzel turns a thin veal cutlet into a broad, delicate sheet beneath fine breadcrumbs. Milanese cotoletta keeps a similarly tidy coating, while British fish and chips surround soft fish with a light batter that puffs in hot oil. Southern fried chicken approaches the problem with more swagger. Bone-in pieces have curves, joints, and awkward corners, so the coating cannot behave like a fitted suit. It gathers into ridges, flakes, and tiny crunchy shelves where seasoning and hot oil meet. Those rough edges are the secret rather than a mistake. More uneven surface means more places for crisp crust to form, which explains why a craggy drumstick can remain exciting from the first bite to the last. The meat underneath stays juicy because the coating slows moisture loss, while the crust dries and hardens in oil commonly held between 325 and 350 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 163 to 107 degrees Celsius. That temperature range matters enormously. Lower heat allows the coating to drink oil like a college freshman discovering free refills, while excessive heat burns the outside before the chicken finishes cooking. Then there's buttermilk, the quiet engineer behind many Southern recipes. Cultured buttermilk generally has a pH between 4.4 and 4.8, making it acidic enough to gently soften proteins without turning the meat unpleasantly mushy. Its thickness also helps seasoned flour cling to every fold. When that damp coating meets dry flour, little clumps form naturally, and those clumps become the dramatic golden crust that photographs so well and disappears even faster. This layered seasoning is where American fried chicken often gains an advantage over its flatter European cousins. Salt and spice can enter the marinade, appear again in the flour, and return in a finishing dust after frying. Every section carries flavor, including the bites far from the surface. The method feels generous because it refuses to make diners search for the good part. The good part has been distributed everywhere. That is also why the dish becomes so difficult to stop eating. The brain keeps receiving contrast. Hot crust against moist meat, salt beside mild sweetness, crisp edges followed by tender fibers. Each bite changes slightly depending on whether the fork reaches a ridge, a joint, or a piece of skin. It behaves less like a repetitive meal and more like a playlist that somehow avoids the song everyone skips. Media caricatures often reduce American food to portion size Yet fried chicken reveals something more interesting beneath the bucket. America took familiar frying traditions, adapted them to local ingredients in southern kitchens, then turned irregularity into an advantage. European visitors may admire the elegance of schnitzel back home, but the American version offers a louder kind of pleasure, warm, seasoned, generous, and built to make a paper napkin work overtime. The fluff advantage. A European breakfast pancake usually knows how to behave. It lies flat, folds neatly, and accepts lemon, sugar, jam, or chocolate without creating a scene. Then the American pancake arrives in a stack, 3 stories tall, carrying butter on the roof and enough maple syrup to require its own drainage plan. That height is far more than visual showmanship. It changes the way the entire breakfast tastes. French crepes are made from a thin batter that spreads quickly across the pan, producing delicate sheets with crisp edges. British pancakes remain slightly thicker, although they still favor a broad, flat shape. Dutch pannenkoeken can fill an entire plate, and often carry sweet or savory toppings across the surface. Each tradition has its own charm, yet the American pancake is designed around a completely different pleasure: trapping air, holding syrup, and delivering softness in every forkful. Baking powder provides the engineering. Once moisture and heat activate it, carbon dioxide bubbles expand inside the thick batter, creating hundreds of tiny pockets. A griddle temperature around 375 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 190 degrees Celsius, allows the outside to brown while the center finishes rising. The result behaves like an edible sponge, although thankfully one developed by somebody with butter and excellent priorities. Those air pockets explain the strangely satisfying moment when maple syrup disappears into the stack. A crepe lets syrup travel across its surface, while an American pancake pulls it inward. Every layer absorbs a little sweetness, yet the browned edges remain firm enough to keep the meal from becoming baby food. Butter melts through the warm center, salt sharpens the flavor, and the toasted surface contributes a faint nuttiness that keeps the sweetness under control. Real maple syrup makes this combination even more distinctly North American. Finished syrup contains roughly 66% sugar, and producing 1 gallon commonly requires close to 40 gallons of maple sap, depending on its sugar content. That bottle sitting beside a diner plate represents an impressive amount of forest work for something most people pour with the carefree confidence of someone who did not collect a single bucket. The appeal, however, reaches beyond sugar. American pancakes allow customization without losing their identity. Blueberries burst into tart pockets, pecans bring crunch, bananas soften into the batter, and bacon adds the salty contrast that makes the next sweet bite feel new again. The stack works like a friendly neighborhood block party. Everyone brings something different, yet somehow breakfast remains recognizable. For World Cup visitors eating in diners around New York, Dallas, Atlanta, or Los Angeles, this style of breakfast can reveal a side of America that overseas coverage rarely captures. The country's generosity appears through refillable coffee, broad menus, and plates designed to keep the traveler moving through a long day. Nothing feels precious or guarded. The meal simply arrives warm, abundant, and ready to be adjusted until it feels personal. European pancakes often celebrate elegance and restraint, while the American stack celebrates comfort through structure. Its thickness gives syrup somewhere to go, its browned surface provides contrast, and its height turns breakfast into a small event before the day has properly begun. By the final bite, the stack has usually leaned to one side, the butter has vanished, and the syrup has reached every layer. The plate may look as though a tiny lumberjack convention ended there, yet the logic is beautifully clear. America did not make the pancake larger merely for attention. It made the pancake taller because flavor needed more room to settle in. America's fluffy secret. Some cultural misunderstandings begin with politics, while this one begins with a biscuit wearing gravy like it has somewhere important to be. To British ears, the name sounds completely wrong because a biscuit belongs beside tea and should never require a fork. In the American South, however, the word describes something warm, layered, buttery, and sturdy enough to carry sausage gravy without collapsing into breakfast pudding. That difference in language is funny, but the difference in purpose tells us far more about American food. A British scone is usually served as a separate object, split carefully and dressed with jam or clotted cream. The Southern biscuit is built to join the rest of the plate, soaking up gravy, egg yolk, melted butter, or whatever escaped from the bacon nearby. It behaves less like a formal pastry and more like the most dependable friend at a backyard cookout, quietly helping with everything while asking for no attention. Its texture begins with the flour. Traditional Southern biscuits are often made with soft wheat flour containing roughly 8 to 9% protein, lower than the 12 to 14% commonly found in bread flour. Less protein means less gluten, which allows the crumb to remain tender instead of becoming chewy. Cold butter or shortening is cut into the flour, leaving small pieces that melt during baking and create thin layers. When the biscuit opens, steam escapes between those layers, producing a center soft enough to pull apart with 2 fingers. Then the gravy arrives and changes the entire mood. American sausage gravy is usually made from brown breakfast sausage, flour, milk, black pepper, and the flavorful fat left in the pan. That last detail matters because the gravy carries the roasted, salty taste of the meat through every spoonful. Black pepper adds enough heat to keep the richness awake, while milk smooths everything into a sauce that clings rather than runs. The biscuit absorbs some of it, yet the outer edges remain firm, creating the same contrast that makes dipping French bread into a stew so satisfying. Across Europe, breakfast often leans lighter or more separated. Paris may begin with a croissant and coffee, while Madrid has toast rubbed with tomato, and many British breakfasts keep beans, eggs, sausage, and toast in recognizable sections. Biscuits and gravy follow a distinctly American instinct by allowing the plate to cooperate. The components are meant to touch, share flavor, and become better together, much like a neighborhood potluck where nobody remembers who brought the casserole, but everyone takes some home. That combination also explains why the dish becomes surprisingly addictive. Salt encourages another bite, pepper cuts through the creaminess, and the biscuit keeps changing texture as it absorbs more gravy. The first forkful is crisp around the edges, while the next becomes softer and richer, almost as though breakfast is rewriting itself while you eat. For visitors traveling through World Cup host regions near Dallas, Atlanta, or Kansas City, this meal can overturn the lazy idea that American breakfast is merely oversized. Biscuits and gravy grew from practical Southern cooking, where simple ingredients had to provide warmth, energy, and comfort without ceremony. There's nothing flashy about flour, milk, sausage, and pepper, yet Americans turn them into a breakfast that feels generous enough to improve the entire morning. The name may still confuse anyone expecting a cookie, but the plate usually settles the argument. Once that warm biscuit begins pulling apart beneath the peppered gravy, the misunderstanding becomes a part of the pleasure, and America gains another admirer before the coffee has even been refilled. Philly's edible passport. Philadelphia found a way to compress an entire city into a bread roll, then wrapped it in paper and handed it across a counter before anyone could overthink the situation. The cheesesteak carries no decorative garnish, no tiny herb balanced on top, and no instructions from the chef. It arrives hot, heavy, and slightly dangerous to a clean shirt, which may be the most honest introduction to American street food imaginable. Its real appeal lies in how perfectly it reflects the city that created it. According to the story, most often repeated in Philadelphia, brothers Pat and Harry Olivieri began selling chopped steak sandwiches from a hot dog stand around 1930. Cheese was added later, meaning the famous cheesesteak began life as a steak sandwich that eventually received a very successful promotion. Nearly a century later, the basic construction remains wonderfully direct. Thinly sliced beef, a long roll, cooked onions if desired, and melted cheese binding the whole thing together like the world's most delicious building permit. European cities also possess sandwiches tied closely to local identity. Paris has the jambon beurre, where ham and butter sit inside a crisp baguette with almost architectural neatness. Lisbon has the bifana, built around pork seasoned with garlic and wine. Berlin's currywurst may arrive without bread as the main event, yet it serves the same urban purpose. Quick, affordable food with a strong local accent. Philadelphia takes that tradition and turns the volume up. Its sandwich is warmer, heavier, messier, and designed to replace a full meal, rather than politely accompany one. The genius is found in the beef. Ribeye is commonly used because its marbling melts quickly on the griddle, coating the thin slices with enough fat to keep them tender. Chopping the meat creates extra browned edges, while the onions soften into sweetness beside it. Then the cheese moves through every gap, preventing the filling from behaving like loose change inside a winter coat. Provolone brings sharpness, American cheese melts smoothly, and Cheese Whiz supplies the kind of unapologetic brightness that makes food purists adjust their glasses. That choice of cheese has inspired arguments for decades, although the argument itself may be part of the attraction. Ordering a cheesesteak in Philadelphia is almost a small civic ceremony, especially when customers decide whether they want onions and which cheese belongs on top. The meal becomes interactive without becoming complicated, which is a very American achievement. Strong preferences, quick service, and everybody convinced their order is protected by the Constitution. For World Cup visitors passing through Philadelphia, the cheesesteak offers something grand restaurants cannot manufacture. It provides instant access to local rhythm. People eat it standing at counters, leaning over paper wrappers, or sitting beside strangers who have already developed firm opinions about the best shop in town. The sandwich becomes a conversation starter because Philadelphians rarely discuss cheesesteaks with emotional neutrality. That local pride matters. American food is often dismissed overseas as a collection of oversized, national cliches. Yet the country's greatest strength may be the opposite. Every region guards its own flavors with almost comic seriousness. Philadelphia has its cheesesteak, New Orleans has its po' boy, Maine has its lobster roll, and each city can explain why everyone else is doing lunch incorrectly. A cheesesteak therefore offers more than beef and melted cheese. It shows how America turns migration, neighborhood competition, working class appetite, and local loyalty into something portable. The wrapper becomes translucent, the bread bends under the weight, and a few onions will almost certainly escape. Nobody asked for a cleaner version because Philadelphia has already given them the authentic one. Pickle saves lunch. The most important ingredient in a Cuban sandwich may be the one nobody photographs first. Roast pork gets the glory, melted Swiss cheese provides the dramatic stretch, and the golden bread poses beautifully beneath the diner lights. Meanwhile, one thin pickle waits in the middle like an experienced referee who already knows lunch will become unruly without supervision. That sour little interruption explains why the sandwich remains satisfying long after its richer ingredients should have worn out their welcome. A classic Cuban sandwich brings together roast pork, ham, Swiss cheese, yellow mustard, dill pickles, and Cuban bread before being pressed until the outside becomes crisp. Written down, the combination sounds heavy enough to require its own parking space. Pork brings fat, ham adds salt, and cheese contributes another layer of richness. Yet the final result rarely feels as exhausting as the ingredient list suggests. The reason is simple food science disguised as a pickle. Acidity clears away the fatty coating left on the tongue, allowing the next bite to feel lively again. Under American food safety standards, acidified foods are controlled below pH 4. 6 improperly prepared pickles sit comfortably on the sour side of that boundary. Yellow mustard brings another acidic note, although its warmth feels different from the clean snap of cucumber. Together they keep the meat and cheese from turning into one long, creamy sentence without punctuation. That balance separates the Cuban sandwich from several beloved European relatives. A croque monsieur in Paris builds comfort through ham, Gruyere, butter, and bechamel, producing a smooth richness that feels perfectly suited to a cafe table. Italian panini often rely on excellent cured meat, cheese, and bread, allowing a few carefully chosen ingredients to speak clearly. The American approach found in Miami prefers a livelier conversation, where every rich flavor has somebody sitting across from it, ready to argue. The pickle challenges the pork, while mustard wakes up the cheese. Crisp bread pushes back against tender meat, and the press forces those competing personalities into the same compact space. It resembles a Miami family reunion where several conversations are happening simultaneously, yet everybody somehow hears when the food arrives. This contrast also explains the sandwich's strangely persuasive rhythm. The first bite delivers warmth and melted fat, while the next carries a sharper burst of vinegar. Just as the palate begins settling into the pork, a crisp pickle changes the texture and resets the experience. The sandwich prevents boredom before boredom has enough time to find a chair. For World Cup visitors eating around Miami, that small detail can challenge a large misconception about American cuisine. Overseas media often presents American food as an endless competition to add more meat, more cheese, and more calories. The Cuban sandwich reveals a much smarter instinct beneath that reputation. America certainly enjoys abundance, but its best regional cooking understands that abundance needs tension, contrast, and a carefully placed sour note. Nobody needs to insult the croque monsieur or demote the panino for the Cuban sandwich to shine. Their goals are simply different. European cafe sandwiches often celebrate refinement through fewer moving parts, while Miami's famous creation turns cultural variety into flavor engineering. Spanish, Cuban, and American influences meet between two pieces of bread, then a hot press makes them cooperate faster than most international committees. The pickle still looks like the least glamorous ingredient when lunch reaches the table. After several bites, however, its purpose becomes impossible to miss. Without it, the sandwich would be rich and comforting. With it, the entire meal stays bright, balanced, and dangerously easy to finish. America placed one sour cucumber beside several powerful ingredients and somehow made all of them taste more confident. That is not careless excess. That is a tiny green masterclass hiding beneath the cheese. Perhaps the real surprise was never that Europeans enjoyed American food, but how quickly a messy slice of pie opened the door to something larger. A country whose warmth, creativity, and generosity rarely fit inside the headlines. From diner counters to neighborhood kitchens, America turns ordinary meals into memories people carry home. Which American dish would you serve to change a skeptic's mind? Share it below, and subscribe to the channel for more stories hiding behind the first single bite.